This is Tim.
And this is Brandon.
And this is Deconstructing Comics. Welcome to Deconstructing Comics, sponsored by Comics Now. ComicsNow.com is an online comic shop where you can buy new comics, back issues, and try out their subscription service, which is how I get my comics here in Japan. Pretty much all the comics in the store are from between 35 to 50% off cover price. And we're happy to have them sponsoring both this podcast and globalcomics.net. So, check out our sponsor. So today we're going to talk about The Residents Freak Show. I was not familiar with The Residents at all. Still not really, other than this, but I guess they're a band.
Yes, they're a band.
And they did an album called Freak Show, which was the inspiration for this paperback from Dark Horse, sort of an anthology done by a lot of different writers and artists.
I think Intern, the comic book, was a inspiration for a video game, kind of like a puzzle. I think it was similar to Myst, but not quite as complex.
Mm-hmm.
So you would travel to different tents and find a little bit about each different character that's identified in the comic book. And I think they even use some of the same illustrations to tell the stories.
Hmm. The styles from story to story vary widely. Extreme variation from kind of a conventional Marvel DC Comics style to kind of bizarre painted pages to some black and white pages that are kind of sketchy or weird. And the stories varied in how interesting I found them also, but anyway, you get exposed to a lot of different styles from this at the least. The front cover, I disliked the style so much I almost didn't read it, but this is Brandon's that he loaned me. What interested you in this? Why did you pick this up?
In like 1992, I think, this came out probably around that time, 91 or 92.
Oh.
Let's see.
Yeah, it was hard to find a date or anything in there. The only place I could even find Dark Horse's name was on the spine.
Yeah, I don't see any date in here either. Well, in 1992, I think, or 93, I was in college, and my roommate owned a Mac, and his Mac came with this game, the Residents game. It wasn't really a game, but it was based on this, and the cover art that you said you didn't like, that's kind of what attracted me to it.
Oh.
Because it is very different.
Mm-hmm.
It's not what I would draw.
Yeah.
It's certainly not Marvel style.
Mm-hmm.
It's very independent, underground style drawing.
Yeah.
Let's see who did the cover. There's not much information about anything except for the stories in here. It doesn't actually say who did the cover.
It doesn't say in the table of contents? Because the contents was like the only place you could find out who did the stories, because on the stories themselves it didn't say
77,
anything.
page 77, it says there's credits.
Oh. Okay.
So let's see, is this 77? There are no page numbers.
As disorienting as the Freak Show itself is trying to find your way around this book.
Kyle Baker, who is now famous because of Plastic Man, He did one of the stories. Brian Bolland, of course,
Yeah.
very famous.
Kyle Baker's was sort of the framing sequence of the Barker at the beginning and end and in between stories.
Yes. And Brian Bolland, everybody should know, did one of my favorite Batman books of all time, The Killing Joke. John Bolton, also very
UN
famous.
ambassador?
No. Not the singer either.
Michael Bolton?
Yeah, Michael Bolton, right. John Bolton, I became familiar with him because he did some of the reprinting of the classic X-Men. He would do the covers on them. I also read a couple of his other stories. Front cover by Charles Burns.
Charles Burns.
He has been featured in Heavy Metal, Pantheon book, True Detective Stories, one of the best known contributors to the seminal comics anthology Raw. And his original Raw insert, Curse of the Mole Man, was recently released in a full cover version by Kitchen Sink Press. He has also done numerous illustrations, including everything from Time magazine covers to a number of alternative music album covers, from pop sub to pop Iggy. So that's for the cover artist. I don't think anyone quite does it like he does. His shading technique is very different.
Yeah.
It's a recognizable style.
It looks almost furry.
Yeah, a little bit.
kind of
Feathery.
thickish, black lines that taper off.
Okay, so we've talked about the cover now.
Okay. What's your favorite in here? Maybe in
I
terms
think it's
of
Brian Bolland's story.
in terms of the art or the story, or
I think both parts of it. Harry the Head.
Mhm.
I enjoyed both the story and the artwork. The Mole Man, I liked the story. The artwork was okay.
Yeah, that was one of the more interesting stories to me. I kind of feel like I've seen that art elsewhere. Who was the artist on that?
Yeah, he's pretty famous, I think. Let's see. Okay. Dave McKean is also a contributor. He didn't do that story. There he is. Richard Sala. Richard is currently reaching untold millions through his colorful and eclectic animated feature, Invisible Hands, on MTV's Liquid television program. He has also had many stories published in several different comic anthologies, including contributions to Raw, Blab, Taboo, Drawn and Quarterly, Prime Cuts, Rip-Off Comics, Twist, Escape, Street Music, and Heck. He's also published his own Night Drive and created illustrations for numerous newsstand magazines.
Yeah, I feel like I must have seen him in a newsstand magazine, like maybe Utney Reader or something, long ago.
Utney Reader? Is that a library magazine?
No, it's sort of a. I think they don't even call it that anymore. They just call it Utney Magazine or something. It's sort of a liberal version of Reader's Digest, or at least it was when I read it.
So it's like Playboy. No?
No.
I think I've read a couple issues of Utney Reader when I was a librarian. That's why I thought it was a library magazine.
Well, I mean, it's probably in libraries, yeah, but not like a scholarly journal.
For some reason, I thought it was like what the librarians would read in order to decide which books and magazines, periodicals they wanted to
No,
purchase.
I don't think so.
So I'm just being retarded. I'm sorry. Okay, so what was it that you liked about Herman the Mole Man? The human mole.
The story interested me. I wanted to see what was going to happen next. Some of them had virtually no story.
Yeah.
And they were just sort of artistic exercises. But Herman the Mole Man had an actual story that I found interesting.
It actually had a full story arc, didn't it?
Mm-hmm.
There's a conflict and then a climax, and then you kind of see it's kind of a bittersweet ending, but see why he became what he became.
Yeah,
it's an origin story.
An origin story. Okay.
By the way, if you hear little voices in the background, those are my kids. We're doing it at my house today. And she wasn't very talkative. She was afraid of Tim earlier today, but apparently now that we have the recording going,
now she's hamming it up.
She doesn't want to be quiet. Okay, so what was it that worked for Herman the Human Mole?
Well, yeah, like I said, just the story was interesting to me. I wanted to find out what was going to happen. He's kind of a weird guy, but he does make some friends, and what happens with the friends is kind of interesting.
You have some distinct characters.
Mm-hmm.
There's really, 4 players?
Yeah.
And then his mother's kind of like fifth wheel.
Yeah, his mother shows up a little bit at the beginning.
So you've got Herman, you've got the girl that's really, really beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Kay. And Gil, his other friend.
Co-worker. They're both co-workers.
Kay's husband, Todd.
He's a jerk, right?
Yes.
And Gil seems like the nicest guy in the world. But they actually put a pretty good plot twist towards the end.
Mm-hmm.
How many pages is it?
Yeah, it was one of the. I think it was one of the longer ones in here. 2, 4, 6, 7.
7 pages.
Yeah, although it also had more text than some of the others, so that might have made it seem longer. I think, Harry the Head is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. It's longer. But some of the others are just.
Like the Amoeba Boy. What was that story?
Amoeba Boy.
That's it.
The Boneless Boy?
The Boneless Boy,
Yeah. Well,
there wasn't much of a point to that, was there?
No, it was 7 pages, but didn't feel like an awful lot happened. And this Wanda the Worm Woman is
I don't even remember that.
7 pages, but
That's
it hardly
Dave
has any
McKean's.
text. It's mostly just painting and kind of bizarre paintings. I mean, it goes by really fast, especially since some of the pictures are so disgusting that you don't want to look at them.
But they were done by, that was Dave McKean's story, right?
Wanda the Worm Woman is John Bolton.
John Bolton, okay.
Yeah.
He does some amazing work in there, though.
Yeah, I mean, it is good.
beautiful.
It's a little weird because of the subject matter, but Dave McKean's is Lily, which that's another one that's a little abstract.
It's classic McKean style, though, with the way the text is written into the
I'm not real familiar with him.
Pause it for a second.
Oh, you want to pause this? Actually, maybe one of my favorite parts of it was Kyle Baker's framing sequence. I thought the kind of Barker ringmaster character was good.
I think it's
The German accent.
kind of interesting to see some of his older work, because I actually like the older stuff more than the newer stuff. It's less cartoony. He's really good at the cartoony stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
But I just I thought he really did a good job with the illustrations.
Yeah. Besides Plastic Man, the other thing I know Kyle Baker for is a graphic novel called You Are Here, which I bought quite a few years ago now.
Have you seen the video podcast? Kyle Baker's video podcast?
I haven't.
It's a series of cartoons, and I think it's all done in Flash.
Mm-hmm.
And it's entertaining. It's pretty good. It's usually, I think he's got maybe 6 episodes out right now. But I get it through iTunes, just because it's kind of kind of cool to see what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's mostly autobiographical. There's this one where he goes into buy his wife an anniversary gift, I think. So he goes to the mall, and it's called the mall.
The mall.
Yeah, and they go into this glass shop, and of course he's with all his kids. I think he's got 3 kids, and they're just tearing up the place.
Did you see any point to Mickey the Mumbling Midget? The one with Lassie.
No, I didn't see any point to it. In fact, I don't even think I spent much time reading it.
Well, there's not much to read.
That's true. It is extremely bizarre.
Uh-huh.
Let me read you one of the panels to let you know how bizarre it may be. I'll read you a whole page. The story begins early one morning in a trailer near Mickey's tent. Today is Mickey's 10th birthday. Mickey the Mumbling Midget. And soon he will be served his favorite breakfast. Oatmeal mixed with chopped up bananas and grub worms. Hey Sid, don't forget you have to shave the runt today. Gladys, I just shaved him last week. Now come on, Sid. There's gonna be press at the party. Gladys? Mickey ran away. He's gone. Yeah. I'm at a loss. On the next page they show Lassie looking at something cowering in the corner, which I assume is Mickey. And he doesn't remotely look human. He looks more like a dog than a human. And it looks like he's mumbling something, maybe profane. Yeah, I didn't spend much time on that story. The stories that I really found interesting was Herman the Human Mole.
Mm-hmm.
The Meat Boy was kind of cool. I like the art, the style, in certain panels. And then my favorite by far was the Harry the Head.
Why was it your favorite?
I think, well, I've always liked Brian Bolland. He's an excellent artist. And the storytelling he uses is very well done with the framing shots and setting up the scenes and everything. But the characters, I really kind of feel for both of the characters.
Mm-hmm.
The girlfriend who ends up falling in love with this head.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end, the head itself, who's been a jerk all the way through the story.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's pretty much left alone because she can't take it anymore. There's actually a sex scene in here.
Sort of, yeah.
Kind of. The post-sex scene. She tries to sell him. Is that right?
It wasn't clear to me what she was doing. But yeah.
She ends up putting him in a bottle. I think dropping him off somewhere. And she's still in love with him.
Yeah, kind of in love with him and angry at him at the same time.
Yeah. I don't know, it was just an interesting story. The camera movement, the angles that he does the shots.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them, like there's this one panel where the head's down on the floor. Just the girlfriend just knocked him off of the mannequin body thing.
Yeah, like I'm not sure what the right term is, but what you use for
like a seamstress?
sewing a dress. Yeah,
seamstress.
Kind of
a form
dummy. Yeah.
So she yells at him. You stupid little man! Knocks his head off, and it's on the floor. And the perspective you have, of course, is on the floor. And then he's still trying to move and do things. So I think I don't know. There's not much you can say about Brian Bowman. He's just really good. And I think the idea of having a woman fall in love with just a head, it's kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
What did you find most interesting in him?
Well, I think I have to say the mole
The
guy.
mole story?
Yeah. And the framing sequences.
I think the mole story, I felt really connected with the character too. He did a pretty good job of creating sympathy for the main characters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and gee, there's Dark Horse right on the front cover. There's the logo. Okay.
I think it was probably released under Kitchen Sink. When Kitchen Sink got bought by Dark Horse.
I'm not sure. I was going to say that, I mean, for somebody who's working on their comics style, this would be, even if the stories aren't interesting to you, it'd be a good way to look at different styles.
That's true. Because they are
widely varying
is
styles.
very different from the next. Some of them more effective than others.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, stylistically, yeah, different.
Yeah, I mean, some of them are barely comics. I mean, it certainly, like Wanda the Worm Woman. I don't know. Is it storytelling? There isn't really a story, or very little of a story. The images to me seem mostly to be, I mean, they all kind of have center on the same topic, the same subject, the same characters, but
There's no real story.
yeah, there's just some different images and some narration. I mean, I guess you'd call it comics because there's not much else that you can call it, but sort of stretches the boundaries.
It's more like a dream sequence then. It's really abstract, isn't it?
Yeah, not as abstract as the McKean one, but I mean the pictures mostly you can tell what they are.
True.
But yeah, kind of symbolic in some ways though. Like the last picture, she's crying and her tear is turning into a worm. I guess if there's any story, it's basically just that this guy loves her in terms of her personality, but can't stand to look at her. But beyond that, there's not much story.
Is there anything else you want to say about Freak Show?
Not really.
Would you recommend it or not?
I think only in that it's kind of a grab bag of styles that you could see a lot of different ways of doing comics. Most of the stories I didn't find that interesting.
Oh, okay.
But the art styles are interesting to look at.
Were the stories that you did find interesting, would you say that they were worth, if you had to buy it? You didn't have to buy it, I bought it. But if you were to buy it, would you find that those stories would be worth the purchase?
Well, let's see, how much did you spend on this? $9.95 US.
I actually spent like $2 on it.
$2? Okay, maybe I'd buy this for $2. I don't know if I'd spend $10 on it, but $2 maybe I would. If I was in the store and it was right there in front of me. If it was mail order, I don't think I would, but
I think for them, it's kind of weird because the people that, with the exception of Brian Boland, who just does a really good job of using a comic book style all the way through, the people who are really good artistically seem to focus more on the quality of the artwork than on the story.
Mm-hmm.
And then for those that weren't as artistically good, I don't know. Their storytelling was okay. It's just the story didn't have much of a plot. And then with Herman the human mole, I think he did an excellent job all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
The colors fit his style. Everything works the way it should. His font and everything, it looks like it's handwritten.
Yeah.
Benny the Bump was just kind of gross. I don't get it.
And who was this by?
Some pervert.
Benny the Bump. Benny the Bump is... what is this? Oh, here. Benny the Bouncing Bump by Porneographics. P-O-U-R-N-E-A-U-X. Porneographics. And it's black and white with a lot of black spaces. There's no gray, only black and white areas. Basically, the story seems to be that he has this bump, some kind of growth from his
Appendage
chest.
On his chest or his stomach.
Yeah, and he's into woman wrestlers. And I'm not sure what that's all about. He wants to be hugged by a woman wrestler.
It's falling apart. You probably shouldn't do this again in my house.
It's chaos here. Yeah. Okay, well, so that's the Residence Freak Show. I don't know if it's still available, but if Amazon has it, I'll put a link to it on globalcomics.net on the podcast page.
I got it from the Dark Horse retailer website. I don't know if I should mention it since we have an official sponsor now.
Well,
but they had it on sale.
I don't. This being as old as it is, I don't know if it'd be possible to get it from Comics Now. But you could ask them if you want to order some stuff from them. You'd probably get a pretty good discount on the price. So, I guess that'll about do it for now before the kids go too crazy. Anything else you want to say?
I have a question. Not on Freak Show, but on one of the things you mentioned last week. I actually did go out and listen to iFanboy, the podcast where they were talking about comics
about Spider-Hag
and about Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. I guess you said you were in some deep hole because you didn't know he was going to.
Well, I was referring to something that one of them said the week before, that if you didn't know that Spider-Man had unmasked himself, then you must be in a pretty deep hole, which I am.
For Civil War?
Right, this is referring to Civil War.
Well, the question I have is that it looks like they have a couple different advertisements in the Previews magazine for Spider-Man and him being unmasked and vulnerable, but he has a mask on. I don't...
Well...
Did it just mean that he revealed his identity?
Yeah, he revealed his identity at a press conference.
But he's still going to wear the mask.
But yeah, when he's Spider-Man, he's still going to wear the mask, I guess, because he'd look kind of stupid without it, I suppose.
His costume has changed, it looks like.
Yeah, well, Tony Stark made this spider armor for him.
Well, it doesn't seem to be working very well.
Yeah, not from this illustration for Civil War 5.
Written by Mark Millar, one of my favorites.
Yeah, he's writing the series.
Pencils and cover.
Mini-series.
McNiven. Do you have the Civil War?
I've got the first 2 issues so far. And then, of course, it's crossing over into most of the other Marvel books. But they're handling these crossovers better than they used to, so that if you don't want to buy everything that it touches, you don't absolutely have to. You can buy the miniseries and then buy, you can see how it affects the books that you regularly read. But if you don't read Daredevil, you don't necessarily feel obligated to buy Daredevil. Whereas before they used to have like part 1 of the crossover is in X-Men, and part 2 is in Spider-Man, and part 3 is in Avengers.
X-Factor, and
yeah.
You have to read them all in order to...
Then you have to buy books you usually don't buy to
I think they did that. But the last one that I actually bought that was like that was with the High Evolutionary. It was a long time ago. It was in the 90s.
That... Not even. That might have been during the time I wasn't reading comics. I don't know.
Well, and the crossover was in all the annuals. So there was an X-Men annual. There was a.
Oh, was
X-Factor
that
annual.
the Atlantis Attacks?
I don't think it was Atlantis.
That was. I think that was in '89. They ran it through all the annuals.
Oh, really?
I bought up the annuals because I thought it sounded interesting, but it wasn't a very well written story. Actually, it took like 12 or 14 of the annuals.
Well, it was in all the mutant books, I think.
Yeah.
And in order to understand what was really going on, you had to buy all of them. Which is an interesting marketing ploy, but kind of disappointing if you're a reader of a certain book. Okay, well, I'll be interested in taking a look at these later.
Okay, yeah, and Comics Now is going to be providing us with additional comics to look at, and so we'll have more stuff to talk about on the show.
And you know what? I think what would be kind of cool is if we had a listener and they called in, not called in, but they wrote in.
Yeah, call us long distance overseas in Japan.
They wrote us an email or something suggesting a book for us to look at that we could get from Comics Now.
Sure. Yeah, if there's something that you read that you'd like to hear us analyze, write to us at podcast@globalcomics.net and tell us what it is, and we'll look into it.
If there's something really good or really bad,
yeah,
it doesn't matter.
Ooh, really bad, that would be fun. Like that Black Panther we tore into a while back. Yeah, so what was I going to say now? Also, if you got comics work of your own that you'd like us to look at and critique, and will be nice, you can also send it to us at podcast@globalcomics.net, and we'll talk about it on the show. So, I guess we better wrap this up. So, this is Tim.
And Brandon.
And we'll see you next time on Deconstructing Comics.
No.